Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about the Indian wrestlers and whether WWE has an Indian representation problem. Now, this comes from Sanga, who was released from WWE on April the 19th. And he went on social media to vent his frustrations on WWE not properly utilizing Indian talent. He says, quote, "There is a little pain in my heart when it comes to viewership. You want viewership from our country, India. Viewership on Facebook is needed from India. Viewership on YouTube is needed from India. Viewership on TV is needed from India. But when it comes to talent of India, they are not taking you forward. Whatever you are thinking is okay. Creatives have their own way of working. But you should understand that we are saddened by the fact that our 1.4 billion people like you, people like us, they want that their country, India, should have athletes who work at the international level, but you are not ready to give opportunities." Of course, at one point he said that it's okay if it's not him, but there are no Indian wrestlers currently on WWE's roster. And this is not the first time an Indian wrestler has been released from WWE, only to turn around and complain almost immediately about their portrayal in WWE. A couple of years back, there was a wrestler named Jeet Rama who was released from WWE, and he also decided to complain about the way Indians were portrayed in WWE. He says, quote, "WWE is a business at the end of the day. I can't tell them to make business decisions around me. They are doing what they think is right from a business perspective. But why is it that you take any Indian wrestler? Why are they always made heels? Why are we only presented as villains? Why do they have to behave in such a manner that the audience there insults them and boos them? My soul couldn't come to peace with the fact that I was making money by misrepresenting my country. When I wrestled at WWE Live event a few years ago in Delhi, I saw that the Indian audience was booing Jinder Mahal. Isn't there something seriously wrong if your home country isn't cheering for Jinder Mahal? At some level, we as Indians have to compromise when we go to WWE. This is a weakness I want to eliminate." Now, there's a lot, right? Jinder Mahal openly said that he quit from WWE, and Veer put out some interesting things too. Veer put out a statement saying, "When it comes to the honor and respect of Indians, sacrifice comes first. Goodbye, WWE." And Jinder Mahal replied with, the fist, like a fist bump. And so does WWE really have an Indian problem? Now, each one of these guys, both Veer and Sanga, are somewhat famous in their home country. Veer was had a movie made about his life called $1 Million Arm. Sanga was on TV over there in India. He was a TV star. I believe he was also a movie star as well. And Jeet Rama was a pretty well-known amateur wrestler from India as well. And in all three cases, the WWE sort of failed to capitalize on this. All three of these guys have been under WWE contract for a long time. Before Jeet Rama was released in 2021, he had been signed in 2015. Sanga was signed in 2018. So when you say that they haven't been giving you opportunities, it's like, bro, it's been 6 years. Like, it was 6 years for Jeet Rama from 2015 to 2021 that he got released. For Sanga, it was 6 years from 2018 to 2024 that he was released. And look, you may have an argument about why do the Indian wrestlers always have to be heels. When you look at not just Veer and Sanga, who were, of course, Sanga was a babyface for a very short amount of time in NXT before he rejoined Veer Mahan as Indus Sher, and they were turned heel again. But the Bollywood boys, who are Canadians, they are of Indian descent, but they worked as heels most of the time. Jinder Mahal, who was of Indian descent or Pakistani descent, is still, Indians and Pakistanis are essentially the same thing. He worked mostly as a heel in the WWF. There's never been a babyface run for Jinder Mahal. Even Mustafa Ali, who was a babyface for quite a while in WWE, again, of Pakistani descent, but Pakistanis and Indians are essentially the same thing. He was a heel for quite a bit of his time in WWE. But you may have a point when it comes to heels. You may have a good point. The issue we have here is that you say that there's no representation because there are no Indians on the roster right now. Well, that can be rectified pretty easily. I'm 100% against the idea of tokens, that we just got to have one Indian on the roster because, oh my God, what is it? What do you mean that there's 1.4 billion Indians and none of them are good enough to be on your roster? It was like, well, at one point there was like 6 Indians on the roster, and it's not like they fired them all at one time. They released them, and they just didn't replace them. There was a guy named Guru Raj who used to be in NXT, who was also of Indian descent. He was released. I don't remember what year he was released in. I think it might have been 2021. But ultimately, I don't think they're under any obligations to meet a token quota or whatever. If there's 1.4 billion Indians, sure. Are they wrestling fans? Absolutely. But what's the difference between them and the Indians and the Africans or the Europeans or the French? I don't think there's any French wrestlers on the roster. They're about to do a pay-per-view in France. There are no French wrestlers on the roster. Should they complain? Should the French be complaining? Or does it only matter when they're brown people? Which is, when I'm looking at on the internet, that seems to be the only thing people care about. Nobody ever asks, hey, is there any French wrestlers on this roster? No. There was only one French wrestler on the roster. Her name was Amel, and she got released. She was from NXT UK. She got released, and she was French Moroccan, and nobody seems to give a damn that there aren't any French wrestlers and no French speakers. Well, Kevin Owens speaks French, and so does Sami Zayn. So, is that good enough that they speak the language, but they're not French, so they're Canadians. So how can we say that you can't ask for these people to engage in the product unless you have a representative from that country? Because there's a lot of countries where there are no representation on the roster, but it's not like you're banned from being on the roster. They just said, okay, Jeet Rama wasn't good enough. He wasn't getting over. Sanga wasn't good enough. He wasn't getting over. Veer wasn't good enough. He wasn't getting over. And maybe Jinder Mahal quit in solidarity with those guys. Who knows? But he also was not really being utilized that strongly, and ended up leaving. And so now there's no Indians on the roster. But that doesn't preclude there from being Indians in the future. That's just the first part of this element. The second part of this element is that WWE has been doing a lot to try to attract the Indian audience. They were doing those superstar spectacles in which they mixed in a lot of their green Indian talent. They even televised it on the network in 2021. And there you had Jeet Rama wrestling AJ Styles on that show. And they've done other superstar spectacles events. They gave Jinder Mahal the world title. Now, he was a heel, sure, but they gave him the world title. They put the Great Khali in the Hall of Fame and all this kind of stuff. They have been playing to the Indian audience for years now. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but the WWE, the management have always liked and played into the Indian audience. They have always done that. Just because there are no Indian wrestlers right now doesn't preclude there from being Indian wrestlers in the future. It's just that these guys didn't work. And maybe they'll have to bring in some more guys who might work as stars who are of Indian descent or who are directly from India. But of course, the issue is a lot of it is the same. That, some of these guys are kind of generic big dudes. Some of them are just kind of not really good promos. It's hard to get them to attach themselves, for people to emotionally relate to them. All this sort of stuff. There could be any number of reasons. But to say you didn't have an opportunity is false. You had much time. I guess you didn't wrestle The Rock or anything like that. But so is that what we're talking about here? You didn't get a chance to be the world champion or something? It's like, what is your opportunity? You got a long-term deal. You got trained to do this. They put you on television, and you were there for years. what more of an opportunity could you be asking for here? So, and look, I'm kind of sick of, these wrestlers deciding to get woke when when they lose their job, and then it's all of a sudden, oh, I cannot stand that I had to work heel when I should be representing my country. Oh no, it's okay that I'm not good enough, but how could there be no 1.4 billion Indians on the roster? How could you not have any of them? It's like, come on, man, get out of here. Kick rocks. Were you talking about this Thursday before you got the phone call? Was this an issue Wednesday? Wednesday afternoon when you thought you were safe in your job? Was this a problem then? Because if it wasn't, I don't want to hear about it now. You're mad because you got released. You're unhappy that you got fired, as anybody would be. But it's pretty typical that it becomes a company issue, and there should be a boycott of WWE by the Indians, except for the fact that they love Undertaker, Triple H, and Roman Reigns far more than they like any Indian wrestler. And that's just me not knowing that much about India. But I can tell you this, they love them some Undertaker, some Roman Reigns, and some Triple H, okay? So you can forget it. They do not care about you guys. Now, it would be great if there was a excellent Indian star who could get over in the United States and be over in India, and they could put the belt on them and draw huge money over there. That would only benefit the company positively. But United States is the home base of the WWE. You have to get over here. This is the country where you must get over. It does not matter if you are over in Japan. It does not matter if you are over in Europe. It does not matter if you are over in Mexico. There have been people who have tried that. Mystico came from Mexico, one of the biggest stars in Mexican pro wrestling history, an absolute flop on American television. Shinsuke Nakamura, huge star in Japan, not that big a deal in the United States. This is the home base of the WWE. It doesn't matter how famous you are in your home country. If you spend 80% of your time, maybe even 99% of your time in Chicago and Detroit and Philadelphia, if you're not over in these places, it does not matter if you're over at home, because they're not going to India that often. They're not going to Japan or Mexico that often. You have to get over with an American audience. This is what foreign wrestlers struggle with, because English sometimes is a second language. The American culture is a little bit different. This is why, some of the most famous Hispanic wrestlers like Eddie Guerrero or Rey Mysterio or even now Damian Priest, they understand because they're Americans. They were born in the United States. So while they have deep roots in the Hispanic culture, they're American citizens. That probably needs to happen with some Indians and with the Japanese or the Chinese or whatever. That probably is what needs to happen. It probably needs to be like a Chinese American or a Japanese American, like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, who's a Japanese American, who can bridge the gap between the two cultures. Because if you come from Japan to the United States, the culture is so different. Asuka famously talked about the difference between Japan pro wrestling and United States pro wrestling. And I would imagine somebody needs to sit down and talk about the difference between India, living in India, being raised in India, what makes you a babyface in India, etc., and how that can translate to the United States. There are human universals, of course, but sometimes people just see foreign dress, they hear foreign music, and they say, I'm not into it. I can't emotionally connect with foreign dress, foreign, languages and different things like this. And they don't really connect with that. But when you play into human universals like death, that's why Undertaker is over everywhere. And from Japan to Mexico to India to Canada, Saudi Arabia, whatever, because everybody recognizes the human universal of death. And that's a simple thing, But if you want to be a representative of your country, you have to find ways of bridging the two countries together. And if you can't do that, then you're going to fall flat on your face, because most of your time is going to be spent here in the United States. So he can be as upset as he wants to be. Jeet Rama can be as upset as he wants to be. Veer can be as upset as they want to be. But it's not like you didn't give a chance. You guys have been around forever. You got paid to train. They brought you here, trained you, put you on television. Maybe they didn't turn you baby face like you may have wanted to. Maybe there's something else that you wanted to do that you didn't get a chance to do. But ultimately, you had an opportunity. They invested millions of dollars into you. Millions of dollars of television time, production time, etc. They're not under any obligation to continue to lose money on wrestlers that cannot make them money. Now, if you go somewhere else and make a mint, then you can prove WWE wrong. But I have yet to see anybody do that. So the door is always open for that option, though. But what do you guys think? Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, Daddy.